Hello, everybody. We are Matt and Kevin, and welcome to Season 3 of the Believe Overwatch League podcast from the Believe Podcast Network, the #1 podcast network for professionals. Please like, rate, and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Luminary, and TuneIn. You can also find us on all social media at Believe in OWL and at Believe.com.
This week, we break down the May Melee knockout round and other gaming news.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the gameplay episode for this week of the Believe in Overwatch League podcast. Welcome, guys. The May Melee was the knockout rounds were a lot. They were very interesting, and we've got the actual May Melee next week. But yeah, how has this week been in video games for you, Kevin?
After the 24-hour stream, we've just I'm kind of chilling. I haven't been able to play a lot besides Pokemon Snap, and I'm trying to get back into competitive Pokemon. They just switched the meta back on us, so I don't know how many of you guys play competitive Pokemon, but there was a meta where we were allowed one, like, what we consider box legendaries on a team, so like Kyogre, Groudon, the Sword Doggos. We were allowed one of those on the team. But we went back to the format where we don't have those anymore, so we now have to get readjusted. But they added more Pokemon, so we just have to figure out what that means for us. So I'm looking at rebuilding, Champion Cynthia's Sinnoh champion team, but for doubles instead of singles. So that's going to be very interesting coming up in the near future.
We talked about Pokemon cards so much that I was imagining you like building a deck of Pokemon cards. I'm like, wait a minute, that's only 6 Pokemon, and like there's a whole deck. And I realized, wait, he plays game Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I'm so messed up.
It's so confusing, right? Like, my history comes up to Yu-Gi-Oh cards and the Pokemon the game, and right now Pokemon cards are, in and not quite the Yu-Gi-Oh. The Yu-Gi-Oh game is the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, so like there's no other weird things going on there.
Have you ever tried any other card game, like actually like gotten invested into it, or is it just are you are you a Yu-Gi-Oh man through and through?
I always end up going back to Yu-Gi-Oh, but I did play a game called Force of Will for a while. It had pretty art, and I was like, ooh, pretty art. So I played it, and then it didn't do well in the States, so I just kind of gave up. But okay. Yeah, I had a couple boxes of that. And I don't know if there was anything that was too insane that I like completely switched over. I just thought that, the games were cool. I like card games in general. I like Slay the Spire. I like Monster Train. Just have fun and enjoy card games even if they're not physical. I played Hearthstone for a bit. But not as much to keep going. So, yeah, I like the concept.
I could never get into like the actual gameplay of card games. Even when I like had Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I never knew what I was doing. I didn't know what the numbers went. I just liked having them. I liked opening up the packs and seeing what was in them, which is what I'm doing now with Pokemon cards with my siblings. Like my sister's like into TikTok, so she's on that trend, so she like looks up the value of cards that we get. So everything that I'm learning about the cards, it's through my sister, because she cares about such things. I just want to get an Entei, a shiny Entei. Someone please give me a shiny Entei. But yeah, so Pokemon Snap came out. Is there anything that you're looking forward to on the horizon of things coming out?
I'm waiting on the Arceus game. There was a whole bunch of games
that's next year, though, right?
That's next year.
Ugh, so long. I want it right now.
Now. Closer. If you guys are into rhythm games, I know I'm stretching my arms out like quite far. But there are some games that like I really want to hone in on. I have a really bad habit of looking at Kickstarter late at night. I don't know if that's a bad habit, but it's also pretty cool. If you guys have played Friday Night Funkin',
It's gonna become a bad habit, Kevin. Don't invest. Don't
I,
invest.
I won't invest in things that I know that I won't enjoy later. But there was a game called Friday Night Funkin'. If you guys enjoyed DDR, um, but for your keyboard, Friday Night Funkin' is essentially a Newgrounds version of it, and it was really fun. Um, they have a Kickstarter on right now, and that they're gonna expand it even further and then put it on Steam. So I already backed that one, but there's there's those. I think there's I'm still waiting on Crab Champions to come out. Uh,
Is that the one where the crabs are fighting?
that's the one where the crabs have guns.
Okay.
The other one I think was called like Seafood War or something like that. That's the one with the crab with the knife.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, just keep an eye out. I know a lot of people right now in Japan. It is Golden Week, which is the like a spring break kind of. Um, it's like the first week of April, every time, but essentially, or first week of May, last week of April. Um, but what they do is it's like a break from school, but most of the time it's like right after, right before or right after finals. So it's just kind of like a nice break from everything. Um, but yeah, definitely take a peek at games that you want to look at, and let us know if you're gonna pick up anything. How about you, Matt? Is there any gaming things that's been happening to you?
I have been waiting for. I know they're remaking Diablo 2, so I'm waiting on that just to have something to play on the Switch. I haven't really been playing anything except Overwatch just because I don't have time
Mm.
to breathe anymore. I've been literally like working around the clock and it's ridiculous because people are either getting things to me late or people are like, "Hey, here's work for you to do. Go do it so you can get money." Which I mean, finally after like I think it's been 6 weeks of working for Wondery, they're finally processing my payment now, so I'm going to get paid tomorrow, thank God. Um but like apparently they never processed my paperwork. So had I not emailed them, I never would have been paid. So follow up on your work, people, and get paid. Um, but I wanna try. I've never played Dead by Daylight, but like I've said in the news episode, like there's the Crypt TV crossover. And I'm a big fan of horror things, especially Crypt TV, because that gave me that like was my entry drug into the world of horror. And I know Jack Davis. I'm actually going to try to get him to talk about like getting Crypty because this essentially, Kevin, we're not really an Overwatch podcast anymore. We're like an internet gaming podcast at this point. Would you agree?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so I feel like I mean we've already had Avalon on the show and like she had the Overwatch connection with the Boston Uprising jersey, which we didn't know about until she mentioned it. Um so I'll see if I can get Jack on here to talk about like how what it's been like translating his characters into that game. But I really want to try it. I know my friends play it and they like it. Um but I mean that's it. If you have any gaming recommendations for things that are cheap, starting tomorrow, I will have a little bit of disposable income to get some stuff to play because I'm getting a little bit bored. But yeah, that's about it for me. I am also waiting for the Arceus game. That's so far the game I've been really waiting for. I don't want to get Resident Evil Village yet. I want to wait till it comes out on until I get my PS5 eventually to play it there. But yeah, that's where I'm at. So the May Melee knockouts. I watched everything except the last 3 maps of the Dragons versus Fusion because that was a 2.5 hour matchup, and I was planning on getting to it, but Wondery said on Monday, "Hey, here's some work, go do it." So I ran out of time. Um, but overall, Kevin, what are your thoughts about the knockouts and this May Melee tournament, which is like this is the second time we've seen a May Melee because they started it last year as
Mhm.
as a way to just figure out how to get people engaged with the Overwatch League, because we were getting to the point where we understood that things were weird with Corona.
Mhm.
The plans for the amazing season they had for us were thrown out the window by this pandemic that nobody saw coming. Um, and they should have done something earlier. They didn't. They eventually listened to Monty, and now we have the tournament format, which they've doubled down on with this season.
Yeah, I once again, I do think that these tournaments are coming a little too early.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of teams that obviously haven't even played each other yet, um, and have yet to even like match up or even get a feel for how tournaments and brackets and how players play or what the meta is at the moment, right? I know the Overwatch League has like its own meta, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just a matter of getting a feel for it and getting your team used to it, um, and all that and so forth. So honestly, like this is the first time that we're seeing potentially like teams cross paths. If we are going to see things that look different, um, it's going to be now. So I'm a little excited to see what these teams had to offer. Which I mean, we saw on Sunday those matches that came through. Um,
Mm.
and there's been a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things that like when you're watching them, you're like, oh, okay, this is weird. Uh, but yeah, it was definitely something that finally felt like it had stakes. But I know we were talking about power rankings last week, right? How like a lot of people make power rankings early and they're like, "Oh yeah, this team is going to be good." Um
Mm-hmm.
and
And like
like it's
even
all about
their
win record.
Watson power rankings thing that they're doing is
Yeah.
weird to me.
So I feel like these things are okay. The power rankings, like this may set something for now, but once again, I feel like each one of the tournaments is always a it's always a coin toss because of the way how the tournament is set up, right? It's always like there's going to be a team that happens to work in this meta and it works well
Mm-hmm.
now. Will that be able to translate into September, which ends up becoming the grand finals, or even in August the playoffs? So
Right.
um, we'll see how well they do. I know that it's literally only week 4. We're entering week 4 of the Overwatch League, so yeah. It feels like there has been. I feel like there's not enough games for us to really tell who's on top, and even
Exactly.
with like these small tournaments, like it's cool to see like some teams go head to head again, but at the same time, I don't feel like it's enough for us to change or like. I mean, it's cool to see consistency, but it's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top. Just to kind of start things off, you know.
I agree with what you said. It's definitely way too soon to do a tournament. These teams only get 4 matches before the tournament happens, and within these 4 match or the 4 matches before the knockout, and within these 5 games that they're playing, they have to both get used to the meta, get used to what these teams are doing, and earn their spot. So it feels like it's so rushed. I like that we're getting multiple tournaments throughout this, but it doesn't feel like the tournament has been earned yet by the league, you know?
Yeah,
Does that sentiment make sense?
yeah. It just doesn't feel like we're ready. Like
Mhm.
it's having a small pool to test it against, and then they come out here. They say, "Oh, we're having a tournament," and you're like, "Oh, okay." And we're just getting used to meeting everybody, and seeing how they work and how they mesh, and then all of a sudden it's like, "Okay, tournament time," and you're like, "Excuse me,
Mhm.
I wasn't ready." Uh,
We're still
but
getting used to the people on their new teams.
exactly, like that's the one thing that I feel like is going to take not only the league to get adjusted to, but also fans to get adjusted to. It's the play style is different. Like the San Francisco Shock are not the same SF Shock from
Oh no.
the year prior, right? There's a
Clearly.
lot of the teams are different in the way how they operate and how they work. So Um, it's going to be really interesting to see, this time now, like who's going to show up, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. One thing I do like about this season, I don't know if it's anything in particular that they've done. Um, but I mean, last season we had them finding different ways to bust these metas that we were seeing, the repetitive compositions we had. Like the hero bands was a big strategy for them. Um, this year we don't have that, but I like the variety in compositions that we're seeing. It's really interesting because um you don't have that stable meta. You've got people like I think mostly you see a variety of different like favored compositions that are very situational. Like you've got the double bubble, you've got the rush, you've got the different dives, but it's like teams are playing their own way this season. It's not like, oh, this out of all the teams right now, all of you are playing rush, but some of you play rush better than others play rush. So it's a matter of who plays better rush, and the better rush is always going to win. Um, but I do enjoy this variety. And to go on to like the numbers and the power ranking thing, it's like even even the standings of the Overwatch League don't reflect what we saw this weekend in the May Melee, because like the teams that are going through to the May Melee are the Florida Mayhem, the Dallas Fuel, the Shanghai Dragons, and the Chengdu Hunters. So you've got those four teams, but if you look at the standings on the Overwatch League website, the top three teams are none of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Fusion, the Justice, and the Outlaws. They have the most winningest record. So if the numbers themselves are saying that the top three teams aren't even going to the May Melee, then I don't understand where people are getting your power rankings from, or how I don't understand how the Overwatch League is running their Watson power rankings exclusively based on like numbers. Because numbers are great. They help quantify things, but they don't tell you everything.
Yeah, they don't tell you how teams are going to match up against each other. Like you could always have a team that like is an like a superstar team that works 100% of the time. But if you have pieces or people who play differently and make them play unorthodoxly, like not play the way how they want to, of course they're going to get thrown off. Of course there's going to be things that like make them have to adjust on the fly. And we it you would not, if you saw the top, you look here and you look at the top 12 teams, you're not thinking that 8 and 10 are going to be the ones that come out on top.
Right?
Like that is that is just strange in its own right. So yeah, it was really really interesting this week. Um and I mean, lucky for me, I was only on the Twitter side of it. I got to see like all the memes fly between the mayhem, as well as I think the ones between the Houston Outlaws and the Fuel
Yeah.
plus the Shock is probably the best like feud that I've seen, and I thought it was hilarious. And the one that I saw was Dante was hitting up the Shock, and he was saying like, "Oh yeah, you're worried about the wrong Texas team. Oh no, you forgot about this one, right?" Um,
Yeah.
and then
I think that's the one I was thinking of.
so yeah, I saw that one, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you suck. Like, you forgot about the other Yeehaw team." And then Krusty replied back to that after they lost to the Fuel, and it's the James Franco meme of him with the like dying, and it just says first time.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, oh, like, it was so funny because he's like, oh yeah, you done goofed. And I thought it was funny because it's like, yeah, we did get clapped, but so did you. So I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. So I think on the funniest half of that, at least there's a little bit of fire coming out from both of these teams, at least on their Twitter accounts wide. So
there's a little bit of humor at least to it.
Yeah,
They're not. I mean, they're salty, but they're not like saltwater salty. They're not Dead Sea salty. All right, so there's a lot to break down. So I think I want to try to keep it as general as we can. So Shanghai Dragons v Philly Fusion. This was, I mean, I saw the social media post being like, this was like the match of the knockouts. Like if you were gonna watch one match, watch this one. Um, Evidently neither of us followed their advice to the end. Because we didn't. I mean, it was a 2.5 hour thing. It was 6 maps, guys. There's so much Overwatch to watch.
guys, this is like
You can Overwatch.
this is 1.5 Mugen trains. You want to put it in that perspective.
I still need to watch Demon Slayer. They're getting a second season, right?
So you have to watch the movie before you watch the second season. But yeah, um,
It'll be on Kiss Anime eventually.
that and the movie's supposed to be out a month before they air the next season. So you have plenty of time to watch it. Um, and yeah, it's definitely pretty.
Okay, so to the best of our limited knowledge of this map and our analysis, um, this was tight. This was very, very close.
Mm-hmm.
Volskaya was the draw map. That was the second map, but like that's where I ended. But watching Nepal was crazy because on Village, which was the first part of this Nepal thing, um, the dragons just kept clapping. This was 100-0 on this capture. Um, the dragons were just out positioning the fusion. The fusion were not able to get any value out of their ultimates. Like there was one part, especially at the end, where the fusion just literally dumping everything. I'm pretty sure it was just like the dragons used one immortality field to keep everybody alive and then dump their own ults, and like they were losing the fight, but they were still able to like stall it out long enough to flip it and just 100-0 this. Shrine was the next map. That was relatively even, I would say. It was 100-50. So not at all a stomp. It was just the fusion. I feel like they got the kills faster. They took it first. And then from there they had the ability to kind of wait things out. They had better positioning. They were able to kind of predict the moves that the dragons were going to do. Like they knew that the dragons were going to try to bump them off of high ground, so they were able to read that and respond effectively to it. But then on Sanctum, it was another 100-0 in favor of the dragons. Like the dragons were just ridiculously aggressive on this map. Like they on the first push, they're pushing, they're fighting. The dragons get their kills. The fusion are running back to spawn, and the dragons don't take point. They run up to the fusion spawn, kill them, and realize, oh wait, this isn't eliminations. We have to go cap the point. So then they run back to the point, which honestly could have been a disaster if they didn't time it out properly. But they were able to get really early kills and space out their ultimates long enough so that the fusion were never even able to touch the point. 100-0. Like I think it was, I can't remember which possession it was, but they had just killed Rascal. Rascal's coming out of spawn on his Mei, immediately spawns, comes out, immediately killed by a fire strike. So I mean, that's so much time you have to wait because you're not going to go up against the dragons with less than a full team, or at least that's how it started. So very, very strong show for the dragons on there. Then you get to Volskaya, which was the draw, and they went to like their second round of possessions. I think here it's fairly even. Both teams are really, really strong. For me, what was really impressive was on the fusion's attack. There was one point where I think it was Fleta who was on the Mei, but Fleta was able to, I think, like almost single-handedly stall out the point long enough on point A so that like even though he's pretty much alone, he's on the high ground with the Mei. He gets like what? I think he gets like 2 kills, then jumps onto the point and then ice blocks. And that's enough time for the respawns from the dragons to come back and then just utterly flip this point, or like not flip it, but like drive the Philadelphia Fusion back. Um, what I've noticed here is that um, both sides are really unwilling to give up fights. Like they're not playing, I think, smart Overwatch. They're just playing stupidly aggressive Overwatch. They're throwing out ultimates in fights that they've lost, and they're unwilling to retreat and regroup. Like even though they're like what, maybe two players down, they're still fighting for these points. And the weird thing is that it pays off. It's like you're going 4v6 and you're somehow able to stall out long enough for your spawns to return fresh and healed up so that they can like help you turn the fight, which doesn't make sense to me. Also, I realized that like why people are playing ball on defense of Hanamura, or not Hanamura, on defense of Volskaya. It's just because it's so much easier to get back to your point A when you're a fast little rolling ball as opposed to like any of the other tanks who are slow as all hell.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I would not I did it today and it worked out fairly well, but like I wouldn't put Ball as like the best hero to play on Volskaya.
Yeah, like it's an unorthodox pick, but you start seeing the league pros using it just to contest, right? Um, it's got a dumb amount of HP, right? You get more HP the more people that are on the point itself, and it allows you to stall for a good amount of time. So, um, overall, I just think a lot more. I hope that it doesn't like translate. Don't try this out on in your pug games. It's definitely
I did.
something for the pros, unless you're confident.
I
Um,
was not. I did it anyway. It
did you
worked.
make it back to point A though?
I
Like,
did.
yeah,
It worked. Like we stalled out point A for a really long time and I was able to get back quicker. Um
yeah,
I
it
started out as Ryan, but then it's like, I'm not gonna make it back in time. Let's go ball. And then I did, and it's like, wait, this is why they're doing it, because you get back faster. This is the
yeah.
only reason why you would pick ball on this, because he doesn't have he's not gonna help you hold the choke. He doesn't have good anchor points on point A so that you can just spin to win. That's point B. That's point B strat. But
Mhm.
damn if you don't get back fast enough to contest.
Exactly, and that's exactly why people would run ball. Like, it's cool if you can survive long enough. Otherwise, don't feed. Like, save your Ryan chatter for when they try to recontest point B, and I think you could play that out a little bit more. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Also, I just want to say for the Philly Fusion, this is sad again. No matter where the Philly Fusion go, they they just can't get a break. The poor Philly Fusion. They're always getting smacked around. I hope that they have better luck in the future because I do like their team. Um, but the Hunters versus the Dynasty. This was a fun match. This one went um actually, before we do that, let me just read the results because we forgot to do that. So these matches started Thursday. Like the actual May Melee this week is going to start on Thursday, which is probably the day I'm releasing these episodes because that's when I have time to edit. But anyway, so the Paris Eternal lost 0-3 to the Atlanta Reign. The Washington Justice beat the Boston Uprising 3-1. The Valiant lost 0-3 to the Charge, and this is Friday. Seoul Dynasty 3-0 to the NYXL. Shanghai Dragons took 3-2 over the Spark. The Boston Uprising 3-2 over the London Spitfire. The San Francisco Shock 3-0 the Florida Mayhem. The Toronto Defiant went 0-3 against the Washington Justice. Seoul Dynasty 3-0 against the Valiant. You love to see it. The Guangzhou Charge 0-3 against the Spark. Dragons 3-0 against the NYXL. Mayhem 3-1 the Paris Eternal. Spitfire 1-3 against the Defiant. Shock 3-2 over the Reign, and now we're on Sunday. So the Hunters versus the Dynasty was a 3-1. I feel like overall, looking at the Seoul Dynasty, they have, I think for me, Seoul Dynasty is the legacy team. You've got Profit, Fitz, Gesture, Toyu Animo Creative. These are players who have been here for a while. Like Gesture, I remember like meeting him in person when I went to Overwatch Arena, and like he's seen as one of the more seasoned, more level-headed, one of the better leaders of the Overwatch League, as well as the rest of his team. So I would, and a lot of them have played together. Like Profit and Gesture were both on that season one London Spitfire team that was utterly dominant. So I honestly I expected more out of them, but they felt very lost. The only map that they did win was Blizzard World, um, but they didn't have really any answer to the Hunters going into their backline and taking them out. Like the Hunters are playing unlike the Hunters that they usually have been playing. They're not like last week. I was talking about like how they're still playing Chengdu Weir. They're not doing that this week. Like this week it matters. So I feel like they really stepped up their game, and it was great to see. So the Hunters beat the Dynasty to advance ahead. So now we've got from the APAC region the Dragons and the Hunters advancing.
Yeah, this is definitely a week that on paper you're like, this looks weird.
It's so
um,
weird.
like you would expect the Philly Fusion, especially with the way how they kind of buffed their roster. I mean, they did put up a really good fight against Shanghai. I mean, 2.5 hours of Overwatch is definitely too much. But it's also proof that like this game was good. It was worth watching these two teams go head to head. The Chengdu match, I did not expect to go that way.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
like we kind of expected, Seoul Dynasty. They got, really good solid pieces. They're ready to go. They're ready to take off, right? And then Chengdu is like, no more weird. We're going pro now. So they did that. They buckled
Finally,
down,
they
and
decided to.
I'm glad that they're here because I mean, sick logo. But also, yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see the Hunters and the Dragons go head to head.
Speaking of logo, I never understood why their name is the Hunters, but they're pandas.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
Pandas are like the least huntery things
Unless they
in
hunt a
China.
bamboo. They can't even really do that, can they?
Like, have you seen the video of baby pandas? Like, baby pandas are so adorable. They like there's one video I saw of the zoo where like there's this mother panda holding her baby cub, and then they give the mother some fruit so she drops her cub so they can take it away and do vet stuff. But it's like they're so adorable. Like the only warrior like panda I've ever seen is Poe, but even then he's like fluffy and adorable.
Yeah, it I don't
Can
know.
you hunt bamboo?
I don't think it's too hard. They don't run.
Really quickly about the Soul Dynasty. I mean they've got such great pieces, but they're still kind of underperforming. What do you and we've seen that throughout I think this season, at least of the Overwatch League, where a lot of the upstarts are taking it to the pros, the old pros who we know can do some great stuff. So is it age? Is it reflexes? Is it coaching? Is it are they relying too much on um their reputation and history? Is it just bad chemistry?
I feel like all those could be factors, easily be factors. It could be, jitters. It could be the first time that, these people are playing on teams, right? Um and also just like the pressure of having to go up against people like this. Um and, first time being in this kind of level like where you have to perform, right? Um I mean, I know that their performances in the past have proven that they decide that they're allowed to be here, but um at the same time, I do feel like it is important to have like to not take people lightly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's also once again like these teams don't have a lot of practice against other teams. So, um at least not that we've seen or at least have had in this environment. I mean, there's a lot of things that I want to say about uh the shock match when we get to it, um
Yeah.
but we can definitely dive into that once we get to there. But there's a lot of things, a lot of aspects, and I feel like the biggest one is still like inexperience in the league.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Not from like veterans, like not saying like, oh, old veterans are gonna dominate versus like the new and up and coming people. No, I feel like it's just experience within the team. Like you're having a lot of new pieces move around, um, but also it's getting used to like the new coaching style, like the new coaching staff, the new coaching style that each team brings.
Okay. Yeah. So that was our APAC region. Now moving on to the NA region for the knockouts. Um, the first one was the Toronto Defiant versus the Florida Mayhem, which I felt was a fairly decisive win for the Florida Mayhem. Um, I mean, last season was when the Florida Mayhem decided that they wanted to get serious as a team and surprised a lot of us by doing really, really well. 3-0 for the Florida Mayhem. The Defiant never really put up a very good fight. They didn't have any answer to what the Mayhem were running. Like they didn't have any answers to um Yakion Tracer going into their backline, taking out their healers, or using the Echo to get like to duplicate whatever they wanted. And like Echo is an insane tool to have. And if you don't like pick up a hit scan to take out the Echo before she can really do damage, then she's able to duplicate your tanks or your healers or your DPS and get that extra ult charge really fast. And then um you you've essentially just lost out because I mean a lot of the time ultimates turn these fights. So if you're not taking out the Echo then or answering it, then you're literally giving a team that's as good as the Florida Mayhem a white flag. Like you're saying, okay, you're running the Echo. We're just gonna let you do what you want to do.
This comes back to that discussion that I had a while ago between building tall or building wide.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when it comes to building tall, you want to have do you want to have a team that specializes in something, right? That's like 100% like you only run rush, you only run dive, you only run, death ball. That's their specific thing, right? That they one trick and it becomes great, right?
Mm-hmm.
You build wide and have multiple players that aren't necessarily the greatest at what they do, but they can cover a lot of bases, right? In this case, it was the discussion of, you know, you have a team that's good, right? Top of their game, but you have no answer to what the Mayhem are bringing you. Um,
Yeah.
which makes it that much harder. So, in that case, I feel like if anything, Defiant might be looking for somebody to replace or potentially have, a backup come in and help deal with some of their hit scan issues that they've been having.
If there's any light on the Defiant, I will say it's Hisu. Hisu's got a really, really good McCree, I would say. Um, and I feel like the kills that he was able to get were partially a turning point for how when the Defiant were able to get success, and that was why because Hisu did a lot of work. There was one instance where I feel like the Defiant did have a little bit of a spark to them. I mean, they did okay on Anubis, but if you look at King's Row during the Defiance attack, they had a really weird rotation. They went they went around the statue and they went up to high ground. They pushed through to like the weird bridge on high ground, and then you're pushing to back to like where it spits you out when you're going towards point B. If I'm making sense at all, if you haven't seen the match, like they push really far past the backside of point A, and they catch Florida out there. They bully them so far back, and they get the kills. And then at that point, like it's just such a weird rotation, and it's weird that it worked. Like Florida really was not expecting that. And then after they get their kills, there's the Florida Mayhem have pushed so far back that by the time that they would be able to get anybody on point after the kills, then the Defiant have already capped the point. So it was such a weird rotation and weird push. Obviously unexpected, but that was the one time I feel like they brought something out of their bag that was unique. Aside from that, they were just feeder fuel. Speaking of fuel, Shock versus Fuel. Kevin, take it away.
This game in itself was very, very weird. Not only because of the way how the games played out, but I feel like one, the Fuel played the Shock really well. Just the way how they were being aggressive, point one. They kind of had their number the entire game. On Busan, they were just reading every play that they can get. On Volskaya, they really couldn't find a footing. They were able to, get to the second round of fights, but still nothing really clicking for them. And Eichenwald was just a lot of the same thing. The thing that I wanted to point out is the roster.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say like, oh, the Shock should have won this. Like it was pretty much in the books. Like the way
all the casters thought that the Shock were going to roll it, not roll it, but at least take the win here.
At least take the win.
I think we all thought that.
The one thing, I don't want to point out any specific person, but I do feel like the difference here is the DPS line. It is not the same as last year in what they were attempting to run. And not to put any dirt on Nero, but it's a difficult role to run, you're a brand new member, a part of a championship team, same thing with FD God. Like these guys don't know the system yet. They don't know it in and out, and they have to play around, FD God's new style of being hyper aggressive almost, which does like fit with Lucio Violet. Play, though. I love his Lucio play. It's very much like a way how the Shock want to go. They want to go fast, but it is a very different way than the way how Moth used to play it, right? His was like slow, methodical, figuring it out. How are we going to play this out, right? But his is like, man, that McCree looking real low. Like I'm gonna go get that real quick. I'll be right back, right? But it's a matter of figuring out the system and how well you're going to be playing together. Not saying the same thing for the Fuel. The Fuel were just on their game. I felt like they found picks, like both on Busan and Volskaya, just being able to outclass them. I understand the switch on point two, when they got into Volskaya, they swapped in they brought in Smurf to change up the main initial attack. They brought in Twilight and moved Violet to that DPS role. That's another thing that role swapping is nice to have that flexibility. But how much can you afford to bank on that? Every single time. And they went back to the same lineup that they did at the very beginning. When they did end up going back to Eichenwald, with Super and Nero back in the lineup. So the thing that I want to point out is it's going to be pretty difficult to figure out how the Shock are going to remain consistent with so many good pieces. That's the important piece that I want to hone in on, is like the Fuel. If you look at them, they're 100% locked in. They had 6 players. They played the whole thing. They were ready. They were locked in. The Shock are juggling very good pieces, right? They don't know who to put in at certain moments. And because of the expansive pool that they have, it might not be the best tool that they can offer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one thing that I'm looking for from the Shock moving forward is going to be consistency. What can you consistently bring to the table? Um, you have the talent. How are you guys going to consistently deliver wins
Mm-hmm.
with the talent that you have? And that is something that's going to take us a while to get to, but joining the Shock, they are going to figure it out.
But the thing that I noticed about the Shock that when they were playing, like the fuel had them read every single scenario. They knew how the Shock was going to play this game. Um, and also when the Shock were losing fights, I feel like they panicked. I feel like they've never been in a situation where they were losing so badly and they would just overcommit ults or would overcommit to losing fights, and then that just ruins their time bank even more. So do you think that the Shock have been playing the same way and have been so dominant for so long that the fuel were able to pretty much kind of get a read on them, and that other teams understand how they play to the point where they have a disadvantage because everyone's studied how to beat the Shock?
Yeah, I feel like that's also a thing that plays into it. It's like the amount of footage they have on you because you keep winning. They can look back at your tapes and be like, okay, well, Striker likes to go this way, or Super tends to do this. Like they have ways to learn quirks through your footage, and so I hope that later down the line they figure out how they're gonna. If they are gonna change anything, I feel like once again it is gonna be consistency, but also the ability to change something not not necessarily mid game, but to like work out essentially a plan B or even maybe a plan C if like teams start figuring out the way how you play. Sometimes you just got to do something weird.
Yeah.
Uh, like even with the same roster, they'll be like, "Oh, super is in, right? Expect Ryan Zarya, Ryan Diva, easy stuff. Like just do something weird. Like put super on Orisa or something like that and see what happens." I know that obviously the knockout rounds aren't the time to try it out, but sometimes like teams are going to be coming in expecting certain things when they see your roster, like who you subbed in and what's going to happen there. So on occasion, I feel like you got to change it up and you got to figure out how things are going to happen.
Yeah. Also, I think it's poetic that the Shock lost to a semi C9. I mean, Super got hacked, so he couldn't pounce onto the cart, but it was pretty almost a C9. They forgot about the cart and they were just trying to fight off the fuel, and then they like realized, oh wait, we're in OT, got to touch cart, did not touch cart.
Yeah. Uh, happens to the best of us. I mean, the best way to say it, like C9s happen. It does.
It do be like that. So the Mayhem versus the Justice. This one went 3-1 in favor of the Mayhem, of course. I feel like this was the Mayhem's games. I mean, the Mayhem are great. I wasn't as interested in them as I was the Fuel games, because I feel like in both matchups, like the Mayhem were just very. I feel like they were the favorites to win. They were very clearly the better teams. Like the Mayhem have great pieces. They've got BQB, Yaki, OGE, Gargoyle, Slime, Gunhamgen. Like this is a team that we know just absolutely rocks. Um, I think just the Mayhem just understand how to be aggressive, and they have better defense. Um, OGE was key here. Like if he's another Shatter God, and he's got really good primals and kills and stalls on Winston, like he was able to, like we were talking about with the Mei on the Shanghai Dragons, that's OGE for them with the Winston. Like he's able to do that shield bubble dance and then wait and get his primal and then stay alive long enough with that primal and use it at the right time for his team to get back and get those cleanup kills and just bully everybody back. So, um, Mayhem won here just because they're the better team. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, they're really filling themselves now, and I'm fine with that. Like, they have a very good roster, and they're starting to find things that click.
And then now we go to Fuel versus Outlaws Texas Showdown of the season, round 2. Um, I don't know what happened here, Kevin. Like the Outlaws looked so good, and I feel like the Fuel were the team that really gave them the Outlaws the most trouble this entire season. It might have just been first day jitters, but the Fuel pushed the Outlaws to a 3-2, and the Outlaws did win it, but it was very close. Like that's when the Fuel first showed that like we are a contender team. We can do some good work. Um, but then they 3-0 the Houston Outlaws. Um, I think Busan was a mistake from on the Outlaws part. They ran a really 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 weird comp on Sanctuary. They ran Torbjorn, Tracer, Hammond, Zarya, Ana, and Brig, which like it doesn't seem like the most useful.
It doesn't have a lot of synergy.
No, it doesn't. Yeah,
Like
that's the word I was looking for. Synergy.
like the Torb I understand to like apply pressure, but with a Tracer in order to get into backline, you're not gonna have consistent damage coming out from that. The the ball and Zarya, like yes, you can get some charge off of it, and that's all coming down to your Zarya player at that point. Um, but honestly, it's just a lot to look at, you know.
Mm-hmm. So there was that weird composition, and then Mecha Base was Houston Outlaws woke up. They ran something that was more coherent. They ran the May, Symmetra, Ryan, Sigma, Baptiste, and Lucio,
Mhm.
which it was a mirror of what the Fuel were running. They had better progress there because they were doing something sensible. But I mean, the Fuel were just so much better. I think they got the last minute like blizzard into where is it? Was it that? No, that wasn't it. Um, I think it was just utterly dominant on all sides. They did push for a second round of attack on Volskaya. It was very close. I think they both. I mean, these teams are pushing each other to play really well. I just think the Outlaws got the worst of it, and I think the main strategy here that really worked was attack Crimzo, because Crimzo's playing the Baptiste, which is I think it was their main source of healing. He's obviously going to out heal the Lucio, and I think they're relying on Crimzo's ability to save them in a pinch with that immortality field. But the Fuel were doing an excellent job of whether it was a dive from the tanks or Tracer in the backline or Sombra hacking and killing in the backline. But in every single map, consistently what they did, no matter what strategy they pulled out, kill Crimzo first, the Outlaws collapse. Kill Crimzo first, Outlaws collapse. And then on Blizzard World as well, something that they really did was they pushed with a Symmetra, which you don't normally see. But when the Outlaws are running a Reinhardt and a D.Va, like they have no real solution to that because both of those tanks, the Symmetra is going to melt you down. And then plus they used their May to like isolate Jungkook's Reinhardt a lot. So if he's alone, he's kind of a dead man. So
Yeah, this is pure example of target priority. Uh, you know, if you hit the support line first and force them to collapse on that, it completely erases their ability to sustain in a fight. Um, I know that a lot of teams know this already, but at the same time, it's very effective. Like it works for a reason.
and so the amazing like this I don't know how they did it, but the Dallas Fuel, whatever they're feeding them, I think they dethrone the most dominant two teams in the West right now. Um, I'm still at a loss for how they changed up in a week from being a team we were saying was very inconsistent to a team that just not one but two upsets.
Yeah, they heard us and they're like, shut up. Like, it's our time now. So yeah, they
We
definitely
casters cursed.
we cast as cursed the other two teams. Sorry, Dante. That was our bad. JK, that was all on you. But yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see, how well they perform later down the line, in Hawaii. Um, they're not in their studio anymore. They get to go outside and stuff and see if that changes anything.
So looking forward to the next week, we are actually going to get, this is the actual May Melee. How it's going to go is it's starting Thursday. So it's actually starting tomorrow at 7 p.m. I'll have this out by then. So y'all can rapidly listen before it starts, but we're going to have the Shanghai Dragons facing against the Florida Mayhem, the Dallas Fuel facing against the Chengdu Hunters. And then Friday, they're just going to repeat that until 6 p.m. when the action starts again. The winners of those two matches are going to go and they're going to stay in the winners bracket and they're going to play on Friday. And then the losers bracket is going to go on Friday as well. Saturday, we're going to get the losers bracket winner. So whoever wins between the losers bracket is going to advance. And whoever loses in the winners bracket is going to face against that losers bracket. This is very confusing for me as well. And then the winners of all of these matches, the winners of the winners bracket and the winners of the losers bracket will face off on Sunday for the actual finale of the May Melee. And announcement from the Overwatch League is if you watch enough hours, you get a special Overwatch League Ana skin from this.
Okay.
Any predictions, Kevin? I mean, this is the first time this season we're seeing East face West.
Yes. That is something. I feel like, okay, all of these teams have powerhouses. I mean, if you want to look at it at its core, like Florida have a lot of just really solid pieces altogether. The Dallas Fuel is the old Paris Eternal. The Dragons are still the consistent Dragons, and the Hunters finally decided to play Overwatch. So watching these first games, I feel like is going to be very, very important to see how well these two teams go head to head. So I want to root on, obviously, like the US teams. I want to see the Mayhem and the Fuel go and do great things. I honestly think that the Mayhem, if they do win the whole thing, it is something that finally puts a target on their back, but they're definitely a team to look out for. And the Dragons are consistent, so I also have to give them that. So I feel like that is something that I'm looking at. But it's always a tournament. There's always things that could happen. And tournaments are tournaments for that factor and that factor alone. One thing that I want to see if they have available for me, please, is there a reset of the bracket? That's what I want to know. Or is it a best of 5 or a team gets a one map advantage, because let's say hypothetically, let's say that the Shanghai Dragons win against Florida Mayhem and against the winner of the Dallas Fuel and the Chengdu Hunters, right? They go into here with a 2-0 record into the finals, right? The other team that makes it there has a 2-1 record, right? So how do you determine if there's going to be a bracket reset? Or is there just going to be like, okay, you guys both made it here. It's just completely reset. You just fight it out, I feel like as the team that's going into it, like if you 2-0 the first team, like you're going to be like, I thought this was double elimination, right? Like I should have a second shot at it. You'd be really mad. but at the same time, you do understand like the other half of it is, um, the other team made it out here, and this is what the tournament rules. So we'll see.
Do you know also if this tournament is power matched or power protected?
That I don't know.
Because it feels weird that like the Outlaws went 4-0 and now they're out. You know?
Yeah.
It feels like
Same thing with the Philly Fusion, right? Like,
yeah, the Philly Fusion were 4-0 now they're out. And it's like the Philly Fusion are still the number 1 ranked team and they're out. Which like in mock trial we had power protected so that like if you're not familiar with what that means, power protected, power matched. Power protected means that the teams with the better record are essentially like teams with like top records are prevented from facing each other really in elimination rounds because you don't want those high powered teams knocking each other out early on so that you have like a void in skill and a huge gap in skill when it comes to the actual finale. You have the teams with the highest power protected from each other. Power matched is all that's out the window. It's that um you can get teams who are at that same level facing each other throughout the competition so that like it's even throughout. Like you don't have like in the early rounds like an easy weakling team like the Valiant facing up against like the Shock and the Fuel and the Mayhem and the Outlaws early on. So they're just getting utterly dominated just for the benefit of the record of these higher teams. I don't know, I assumed that this was power protected. But then again, it's Overwatch League and it's weird.
yeah, they're gonna have to figure that out going into the rest of it. But I hope that they figure it out. And you know, the May Melee, we finally get to see. I guess the winners of both sides finally go head to head. So, um, I hope another thing. I hope that we get some cool B-roll footage of Hawaii.
Oh
Uh,
yes, please.
I
Oh
would
yeah,
I
this is
would
gonna
love to
be
see the beach.
this is gonna be a new thing for the league as well with
Yeah.
Operation what's it called again, Kevin?
Oh, Project Aloha.
Project Aloha. Yeah, this is going to be new for them. Like this is going to be the most in-person thing they've had. They're doing this to limit lag as much as possible, limit high ping.
So
Um
what I heard, this is coming from my inside man. Um, they're saying that the games themselves are going to be played in Hawaii, right? Like on Hawaiian server, it's all equal ping for both teams. That way, they don't have the ping discrepancy, right?
yes.
Um, the production itself is still all online. So, like the casters and those guys get to watch the games, get to see the games and how they're going to be shown, but sadly for them, they don't get to be in Hawaii. um, so it's gonna be all up to production to give us that vibe. I want the May Melee tournament, but I also want B-roll of Hawaii, please. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm glad that we finally get this mix. That is one thing. I want the Mayhem to prove that, you know, you may have a bunch of old farts, but they're good old farts, and we're ready to go.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think like if the dragons perform well and they take out the Mayhem, I think the Mayhem are gonna have their anime arc climb all the way back. So
They're going to pull a San Francisco Shock?
I think so. I think they're gonna lose once. They're gonna get like I want to say that they're gonna get like 3-1 by the dragons. Go into the lower level, fight against the hunters. They'll win that, and then they'll beat the fusion, and then they'll come up. So I think that's the way how it's gonna go.
Okay. I feel like I want to say the Dragons are going to win this, but I feel like with the fuel like how I was saying I feel like they know enough about how the Shock were playing. I feel like they know enough about how the Dragons are playing, so maybe they're able to get a read on them as a team, even though the team is changed a little bit. I feel like they understand how the Dragons play. They might understand how the Dragons play enough in order to get that win. I also think that the Chengdu Hunters, now that they're playing seriously and not, as long as they don't go Chengdu zone again, I feel like they could be enough of a threat to the Dragons. I for some reason I don't see Florida winning this as much.
Yeah. I mean, if the Fuel have that person who's been doing research, like they have that person who's got the inside info. If they could keep consistently proving that they know their opponents well enough, they can take it. I mean, they have a great personnel with Sparkle and Doha. So I feel like that it's just a matter of execution at the point.
Yeah. I don't know why I don't see the Florida Mayhem winning this. I think that the teams they're going up against are either so strong or so weird in how they play that I feel like the Florida Mayhem won't be able to match it on one of those criteria. I still like them. I think they're a great team. I think maybe they play a little bit too conventionally for the Hunters or the Fuel. And then I don't think that they're at the level of the Dragons.
Yeah. That's what I'm mostly afraid of, is like they won't be able to match that push that the Dragons can give them. But yeah, that's the beauty of tournaments, right? Like this literally exists in a Hawaiian bubble. So we get to watch all that go down this weekend, and we'll see how that plays out and shakes up the rest of the league.
And again, we could be completely wrong. We won't know until they actually face up, because this is the Overwatch League, and none of us would have thought the Dallas Fuel would be here right now. So anything else that we want to talk about on this, Kevin? We have been talking with each other for at this point 3 hours ish now. My voice is starting to hurt.
Yeah, I feel that. If anything, play your games, have fun. If there's anything else you want us to cover, like, please let us know about teams wise. We can't cover everyone. I'm sorry if we leave anyone out over the course of the weeks, or we feel like we're sweeping things under the rug, but it's not. It's more like we're human. Okay, we can't just watch every game.
I know we say that we don't sleep, but we do have to sleep.
Yeah. So yeah, we're trying our best here.
Yeah, we have work aside from that, and life. We love this. We love doing it, but it's like, if you don't tell us what to focus on, we're gonna focus on what we think we should focus on. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in. Excited for the May Melee, and we will cover that next week and break that down for y'all. Thanks for listening. If you haven't listened to the news section, please do. We have a very fun. I teach Kevin something about Iceland at the very end of that one. It's fun. But thanks guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Adios.
Next week, we cover the remainder of the May Melee tournament and bring you more gaming and Overwatch news.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you like what you hear, please like, rate, and subscribe to us on all your favorite podcast platforms, and follow us on all social media at Believe in OWL. Questions or comments? Please send us an email at believeinowl@gmail.com. If you'd like to advertise with our show, please contact our network at believe.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.